Hello, my lovely bookish people. I am here today to talk about a book that I read not too long ago that I absolutely, positively fell in love with. And I wanted to share my experiences with this book with you because it was just unrealistically amazing. And I don't feel like I'm ever going to have another experience with any book like I had with this book. It lit me up. I felt so much. And I came back completely changed, which is the journey of reading often. And I felt like this was really true in this book. So this was not an easy review for me because there's a lot of elements to this book that are very in-depth, and there's a lot of elements in general. And I'm just trying to think, when I was doing this review, what was going to lend this story the most power, what gave the story the most power. So I really kind of tried to focus on that. This is by no means, I don't feel like, a expansive review on every little detail in the book that happened. This was my personal experience, but this also kind of shows like a little bit of the storyline itself and where I got those ideas and those images from as well. Because this book had so many elements, I tried to capture it the best that I could. I read The Wolf and the Whale by Joanna Max Brodsky. This was a book I heard about over on Jess Reads Books. I will leave her channel linked above. And the second I heard about it, it sounded very intriguing. It was about a girl that could communicate with her gods. This book actually takes place surrounding the fictional stories that were told the only time the Eskimos and North America had come into contact with the Vikings. This takes place in the year of 1000 AD, 1,000 years after Christ was crucified on the cross. This actually takes place in northern Canada, where they have very long days and very long nights. And things are very rough and conditions are very rough. It's hard to find food and people are starving. This actually takes place around the Inuk, which is a band of Eskimos in the very far reaches of the northern plains, where snow and fear of falling through ice is very common. And actually one of the most common deaths is not starvation, but falling through thin ice and freezing to death, which is the biggest concern in this civilization. What I was not expecting when I first started this book was that this was going to be really leveled around indigenous culture, an indigenous culture with their own gods and their ideas. And I wasn't quite sure what 100% to expect when I was reading this book. I've always had a great affection for Native Americans, their affection for their civilization, their affection for the world around them. And this book was definitely deeply rooted in that, because of the fact that this is more of an indigenous culture and the fact that this is a culture that deeply relies on their surroundings for survival. Their gods are also based on that as well. What it means to be a shaman in this culture means that you are the one who helps communicate with the gods, and the gods help you find food. So they depended on the gods greatly in order to help them find the caribou that they needed to survive. They are a little bit of ways away from the ocean. Whale hunting was a skill that died with one of their ancestors quite a while back. So that is not a skill that they know how to utilize. So these people actually have to go through and they have to worry about getting food from their surroundings on the chilly plain of Canada. They don't say specifically where up north this does take place, but you do get the impression like that it's up on Canada or in Alaska region, and it's a few days walk from the ocean itself in that region. This takes place around the tribe, the Inuk. The Inuk are the Eskimos that live in this chilly plain. This starts off, as all things start off, with a new life being brought into the world by a mother who is struggling to give birth. Nona is having a terrible time, but she is not giving up on her baby. Her husband, who had fallen through the ice, Omat, is already dead, and she is bound and determined to bring his spirit into the world through their baby. In this culture, they believe that their ancestors are reborn through the new babies that come into this culture. And so this is a great honor for her that she is willing to give her life for. Unfortunately, she dies in childbirth, and the father, Omat's sister, Punja, is forced to take care of Omat, the baby. And so the grandfather, looking up into the baby's eyes, decides to name the baby Omat after the father to honor their tradition and also to honor his son's spirit. Punja takes one look at the baby and says to herself, I do not believe this baby is going to survive. She takes the baby out into the snow and gives it to the world to see if it will survive. Late that night, a white wolf comes and keeps the baby warm and gives it some of its energy and its power to the baby in order to survive. When Punja comes out, she realizes that Omat, the baby, is still alive and has been blessed by the white wolf gods of the plain. This first part of this book is really about character development for Omat. We get to see Omat grow. We get to see how Omat is being groomed for the honor of being a shaman and to help his family and relatives and everyone around him find food. It was a great honor to become a shaman. There was only really one person in the entire group that was able to become a shaman. It was always the men that got to do this. This tribe believed that if a woman went out and hunted, that she would curse the tribe and would anger the gods, and they would not be able to find food. The funny thing is, Omat for the longest time believed herself to be a man because she was raised to be a shaman. She was raised to be powerful with the gods. Omat's grandfather, Atada, believed that because his son Omat's spirit embodied his granddaughter Omat, that this person should become a shaman. However, for the longest time, Omat believed herself to be a man. Instead, we find out after about 50 to 60 pages in that Omat is not in fact a man, but a woman who is being raised as a man. This really emphasized gender duality and the ability to instill power in people by titles alone. The reason why Omat was allowed to continue on, and they were not so worried about angering the gods at this point, was because she had not yet become a full-fledged woman. Her breasts had not yet grown, and she had not yet had a menstrual cycle. As long as she can maintain masculinity in those aspects, she would be allowed to continue to hunt. After many seasons of her hunting and learning how to be one of the best hunters there is, and being a protege to her grandfather as a shaman, the caribou begin to diminish, and they believe it might be because Omat, being a woman, starting to anger the gods more and more as time goes on because she's becoming more and more of a woman as time goes on. The escalation of her growth greatly depicts this as they welcome new hunters into their area. Izuk is a very violent hunter. He is also very much about status. He has 2 wives and a baby that he has no problem providing for these people around him. But the fact of it is that when he comes and introduces himself to Omat's tribe, he also brings with him the skill of whale hunting, which is a thing that has been lost to them for quite a while. At this, they decide that maybe they should let him in and allow him to teach them how to hunt whales. As a preliminary thing, they go and they hunt whales, and when they come back, Omat and Izuk get into a big fight, in which time she accidentally reveals her chest, and Izuk realizes that she is not a man. She is a woman who is allowed to hunt, and he realizes that she is being raised to be powerful, but that also means that he is a man who enjoys his prey. I will say, like right now, that there is a trigger warning in here heavily for rape. And because of that, it's not so much like that they depict it physically, they depict it emotionally, which can be just as harsh and just as detrimental. So Izuk takes some of the other males from Omat's tribe out to hunt. This is the one instance where Omat is not allowed to go because they believe that she might be the one cursing them not to find food. In her desperation, she goes and she seeks the moon god. The moon god is the one who's been trying to get at her. He's the one who's responsible for women and womanhood. Her animals, the white wolf that protected her in the beginning, have been protecting her all along from becoming a full-fledged woman. At this, he curses her, takes away her power, and says to her, "You are now woman." When she comes back to her body after her spirit journey, she realizes that she is now having a menstrual cycle. From here, things get really violent, and this takes her far away from home. We encounter Vikings on this journey of self-exploration, and it's not just a journey of self-exploration, it's a journey of becoming who you were meant to be and embracing both sides of your duality. For Omat, it wasn't the fact that she was just a woman, and it wasn't just the fact that she was a man, it was the fact that she was allowed and could be both. This has a lot of magical realism aspects to it, especially when she is encountering their communion and communication with the gods around her. And I know like that a lot of people are not really a huge fan of magical realism because it really is an acquired taste, but I feel like that this was so well done that it would probably please a lot of people that wouldn't normally be into magical realism. And I think what the thing that really made this magical realism is because when her spirit went out, she could become a bird. She soared high above the clouds. She went to many different places, and the only thing I can really say is like that was a form of magical realism to me that allowed her to go and do magical things in a really realistic based world. One of the most beautiful things I think about this is that upon her journey, something happens and it takes her even further away from home. I don't want to say too much about this because I don't want to ruin it for you if should you decide to go on this journey with this character. But in this, we also meet Vikings and the Viking culture, and we see a lot of that Christianity starting to flood through the more indigenous regions. And in these indigenous regions, it is considered very blasphemous to believe anything else than what the norm is. At this point, Christianity is not the norm. It is still seeping into the creaks and cracks and crevices of people, and not in a wide manner. They believe that if they see a cross on somebody that they should be sentenced to death, and it is religious prosecution in this book to a lesser extent. It's not a huge portion of the book, but it is a undergoing theme when religion is still trying to infiltrate even the far reaches of the world. We also meet the most wonderful male Viking, and he is this red-headed guy with long red beard and long red hair, and he's trying to get away from the Vikings that he hates so much because he does not agree with what they do, and he does not agree with the pillaging and the murdering and the raping, and so he decides to break away from all of that and journey southward himself in order to find peace and to find a place where he does not have to be involved in that. Omat saves him from a bear, and they form this beautiful friendship, and for months he does not know that she is a woman. She plays the part of a man. Of course, you know, at one point something happens and he finds out, but this has a beautiful love story that underlies every single thing else that is going on in this book. And it wasn't like it was insta-love, which I loved. It wasn't like it was this overpowering theme. It was just an underscore. And I honestly thought that this story was amazing because through the love that Brandir showed Omat, not only was she allowed herself to gain acceptance for her feminine side, but she also gained acceptance that for her masculine side. And it took Brandir accepting both her masculine and her feminine side for her to be comfortable with both. One of the things that was so beautiful about this is that Brandir made her whole because it gave her the ability to accept herself as she was, and allowed her to accept that she could also be a woman in a man's world and still feel powerful. This book really has a lot of underlying themes of Omat trying to regain her power in a masculine-dominated world. She's on a journey to find her voice, to find where she belongs, and to regain everything that she loves. During her communion too with the gods, she actually has several encounters with Norse gods, and which leads to a huge climax. And I don't want to say anything more than that. That's kind of a teaser, but because of how amazing that and epic the ending was and how everything was portrayed, this book completely and utterly stole my heart and my soul, and I absolutely could not tell you how much I utterly adore this book. I think I'm going to end the review here as far as the non-spoiler pieces go, because I don't really want to divulge past this for the non-spoilery area. So if you do not want any spoilers, and there's not going to be a ton of spoilers at the end of this, but there are a few, and so if you do not want those, stop watching right now. So upon our spoilery discussion, we do get to a point like where she ends up encountering the Norsemen themselves and she has to survive. But upon that, she also encounters the Norse gods and she has to communicate with these gods. One of the wonderful things about this is that they kind of incorporated a lot of Norse mythology into this as well. And so there was this huge thing called Ragnarok, which for Norsemen and the Norse gods was considered Armageddon. It was considered the extinction of a life that they knew. And so in Omat's battle to become more powerful, she is actually witness to her gods fighting the Norse gods in order to gain supremacy over the land, which not only is a extremely strong figurative fact about this book and a figurative representation for what is actually going on in this book, but it's also kind of a marking for an end of an era, the end of the old gods and the beginning of Christianity flooding into the newer regions. So this book really explores a lot of different underlying things, and it does it in such a fantastical and amazing and beautiful way that it made it extremely memorable to me. And I don't really feel like how these elements were blended, I'm ever going to find that in another book. I will say too that the ending of this was absolutely perfect. It sewed everything up completely perfectly well. I loved seeing all of the gods just kind of come and fight, and I'm really glad like that this was not anticlimactic, because I always worry about that in books. I always worry like that it's not going to end like it's supposed to, like it's not going to end strongly, like that it's going to have a weak ending which is going to ruin the rest of the book for me, because I believe personally like that the ending is so deeply important in these books, and the ending can really make or break a book. And so if you get a bad ending, you kind of feel like you wasted your time. And I really don't feel I wasted my time with this book. I feel like I went through and I tabbed it, so like all of my favorite spots that I can go through, and it is tabbed so freaking much that because there was so many beautiful things, like so many aspects of the story that I want to go back and revisit, but I may not want to go through and like read the whole thing cover to cover. I just might want to go back through and revisit certain aspects of this. I have to tell you that I can't even get over how much this moved me. And at the end, when Brandir shows up again after he has to take care of some of his responsibilities back in his country, I honestly was so scared that this was going to have an ending where she did not end up with the love of her life. And I was so scared about that. And I was so torn up about it. But the fact that he showed up again, the fact that he was faithful enough to realize that his home, his real home, was with Omat, was just one of the most beautiful things that I can honestly say that I've read in a book in a very long time. And it really got me a little bit teary-eyed. I think this romance was perfectly placed, and you know, like it really shows the longevity of a romance. Well guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I hope I didn't ramble too much. There was so much to this book and so many elements that I don't know if that I could say it all, and I don't know that I said it right, because of it is that this is a very complex book. There are a lot of aspects that I don't know if I captured perfectly in this review, but these are the aspects that I noticed, the aspects like that I feel really lent the book power. And I hope you guys really enjoy this review, because I really enjoyed reading this book and I really do highly recommend it. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars because it was everything that I wanted it to be, and it was everything that I didn't know I wanted it to be that it ended up being. So if you guys like this video, hit the little like, hit subscribe, and hit the little bell icon if you want to receive emails every time I post. Also, if you want to connect with me socially, I am on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and Amazon. Those links are linked in the description below. As always, thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you again very soon.